You found us, the secret podcast of Emil Guillermo. Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. My takes on all things considerable. And, I like it when elections are kind of like short and neat and there's no question about, you know, I want to recount. I mean, it's got to be a landslide or it's got to be enough of an edge that no recount will undo anything. And I just like it when it's just a few small areas, right? Like you're looking at Virginia last night, you're looking at Ohio for the abortion issue, whether it gets enshrined. That was a word that some reporters used, enshrined in the Constitution. You're looking at Andy Bashir in Kentucky. Kentucky was one of those places that I thought, this might be a good place to live, to move to. There had a few friends there in Kentucky. It's right contiguous to Ohio, where I've got family in Cincinnati. And I thought, and then a number of things went wrong in Kentucky that I thought, no, how can you compare California with Kentucky? But last night, I think if you saw Andy Bashir winning, and you see my column in the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, where I talk about how, this issue, I was talking about the Siena New York Times poll, Siena College. CNN came out with their own poll, which pretty much verified what the Siena College New York Times poll said, and that's Biden is behind with blacks and Latinos and with young voters and behind in all the key states. And that no one wants Biden, and really not that many people want Trump to run either. The electorate is looking at the two choices and they're not very excited with a year to go. And so I was interested in how this Time Siena poll had, they put up the candidates against a generic Republican or a generic, would a generic Republican beat Trump or Biden? How well would that person fare? They would win. Would a generic Democrat beat Trump? Of course, like 8 to 10 points. And so I think it shows that America wants a kind of normalcy, right? They want a generic candidate who isn't going to surprise them, is going to who's consistent. They want someone who's more moderate than not. And so I wrote that column and posted it last night. And isn't it funny that here comes Kentucky Governor Andy Bashir? I mean, he is the kind of okay moderate that I think Democrats nationwide can get behind. I mean, there's some other names that have been tossed out there, in terms of, who's a generic Democrat? Would that be Gavin Newsom of California? I don't think he's that generic. I think people see Gavin Newsom and they see California. And unfortunately for Gavin Newsom, because I think he's a good guy, I think he's got some good policies. That's why I live in California. But a lot of people don't want to be California. That's why they're in Kentucky. That's why they're in North Carolina. That's why they're in South Carolina. You get someone like Andy Bashir emerging as a 2-term governor of a place like Kentucky. And if the Democrats are desperate and they need young blood, I think they're going to come knocking on his door in 2024. And if not in 2024, in subsequent years, they'll come knocking on Andy Bashir's door. 2026, 2028. If he keeps his nose clean as it were, no funny business. He stays as moderate and as milquetoast as he is. He's kind of an acceptable moderate for Democrats who want a generic donkey. And last night he proved it by winning more blue votes in red counties in Kentucky. And Kentucky's really basically a red state. But he outperforms where Democrats have underperformed. He outdid Biden in some red counties. So he held his own and did more. And so congratulations to Andy Beshear. I think if things go well for him, I don't know if that means well for us, you could be looking at a guy who could be a national leader for the Democratic Party. If they respond to this idea that, hey, people want a generic Democrat, a generic donkey. I don't know if there's such a thing as a generic Republican. I guess you could watch tonight to see who emerges as a generic Republican at the debates. I'm not going to watch the Republican debate, though. And Donald Trump's not going to be there. It's not a legitimate debate. It's a debate against, people who are really also Rands. And the main guy, after his really, I think, disastrous performance at his civil trial in New York, he's in Florida. He's going to be partying with the Miami Cubans, which is his way of showing or embracing diversity. And this is the way it's going to be. They're going to find more and more people of color who have drifted over to the Republican side, because that's what the polls are finding. There's no enthusiasm for Biden, but it doesn't really show that people are really drifting over to the Republicans, but they're open to it. And especially Latino communities like the Cuban community, they've always been right there for the Republican Party. I remember covering a Republican convention in 1980 it was? I remember being there and noticing the strong contingent of Cubans. They were the Hispanic voice for the Republicans, and now Trump, some 43 years later, it's a sizable crowd. He's going to use that to hold it up to the Latino community, saying, hey, look, I got Hispanics behind me. We'll see if it works. But that's probably going to be more interesting than whatever happens at the Republican debate. One thing that will come up, they'll be talking about abortion. And that was the other big story last night. Because I guess some people weren't too surprised, because they had a feeling that this was going to happen, where the vote would flip and Republicans in the suburbs would come voting to put abortion rights in the Constitution. But to see the Republicans now scramble, it's kind of interesting, because it's just, they don't know what to do with themselves. Abortion has always been that galvanizing issue. And it was mostly because of the evangelical forces that had such a grip on the Republicans. And now people are in the real world, and they know that, hey, we believe in, we're all children of God. We certainly don't act like it. Those right-wing evangelicals. But we're going to force you to have your baby. And now, they won on the federal level because they saw the court change, and they got the court to act. They handpicked, all the judges. Trump did. And they stacked the court politically. And now they essentially got a federal ban on abortion. And now they're creating make work for anti-abortion folks, state by state. They're going, and what they're finding is the nation is pro-abortion, and they don't know what to do with themselves. They have to suddenly abort their strategy on not just abortion, but all other policy issues, because abortion has always been the central one that brought people together. And now they don't know what to do with themselves. I mean, Kayleigh McEnany, she was on Fox saying we got to be more than just pro-baby. Yeah, you got to be more. You got to have more than one issue, and that's the problem. They don't have more than one issue right now. The one issue for the Republicans is they are an aggrieved party because they see the white population going down. They see their numbers dwindling. They see influx of immigrants. They see this notion that the United States will be a majority nation. In some states, it's already happened, but throughout the country, it will happen by the middle of the 2030s, maybe by 2040. And this is really where race rears its head when it comes to Republican policies. And I think they're going to come up with this idea on abortion that will just be in line with their other racist ideas. And that is, hey, we're for abortion, to try to reverse this idea that, oh, we're so evangelical, we can never be pro-abortion. We called it pro-life, we called it pro-family, but that wasn't doing it for people in the real world in these modern times. The Democrats are finding that, hey, pro-choice wasn't doing it, but they sharpened it a little bit, their message, and they called it pro-freedom. We're for freedom of choice. And that's what's selling with some moderate Republicans. And so as the Republicans have to sort of redefine their stance on abortion, I think this is going to happen. They're going to talk about, well, we need abortion to keep the populations we don't want to see. We want to see their numbers down. I'm sorry. We're working on immigration, building up borders, limiting immigration. We want to see those population numbers go down. The birth rate has to go. I mean, if the white birth rate is down, you can't have Black, Hispanic, Asian birth rates go up. No. I think that's going to be the move, the natural racist move that the Republicans have left. To be true to, their MAGA stands and people who, look, it's a MAGA party as long as Trump's still there. Ideally, they would say, we're pro-abortion as Republicans, and we're going to start by aborting our former president and say he should not run. Not when he's got all these legal entanglements. He's not the best face for the Republicans. That's where ideally they should go. But I think they're going to keep the MAGA thing, and they're going to go race. Because, that's the old saying, like, Vince Lombardi, right? To paraphrase the great football coach, when the going gets tough, the tough go racist. And I think that's they've always gone racist. That's my prediction for post-election abortion politics from 2023 on. I mean, the Republicans are trying to figure out, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? We're losing on abortion. We're losing the suburbs. We're losing the women. They can blame the evangelicals, but I think a lot of people just are faced with the reality that, even religious folks would rather be pro-choice when it comes down to it. They like the freedom. And that's the way the Democrats are now positioning the idea of abortion. It's not just choice, it's freedom. Ah, yeah, we like that. People like that idea. And now the Democrats are going to hopefully use this to win in 2024. They don't have to talk about Joe Biden now. They say, we're the party for choice. We're the party for freedom. We're the party for everyone. And we'll see if it holds for a year. But I definitely think this whole race thing, I think they're going to have to go race. And it's going to sound kind of despicable. But, Republicans have done despicable things, and no one's, building a wall is racist. Muslim bans are racist. Can you honestly say that, they'll have trouble saying, oh, we need to control the birth rates of people of color, and that's why we're pro-abortion? I mean, it's racist as hell, but it's going to be their stand if they're going to be pro-abortion. The one area where they can be pro-abortion, well, it does keep the number of brown and Asian and black people down. That's what they're going to say. That's just the America that I've lived in, the America that I've experienced, the America that I know. I just think that that's more likely to happen than not, as the Republicans scramble to be more than the baby party, because they don't have any other issues. All they could do is attack, ad hominem attacks, hold up Trump, say, oh, you're attacking Trump, so now we're going to attack Biden. Now they're trying to impeach Biden, right? That's one of their big issues. Are they helping the American people? No. What are they doing for the American people in terms of the economy? Nothing. Infrastructure, nothing. I'm telling you, the Republicans without abortion have lost their soul. They don't have it. But they can regain it in true racist Republican fashion if they say, yeah, we're for abortion, because you know what? It keeps those welfare numbers down. It keeps the numbers of those people that we don't want to let in at the border down. And, like I said, the white birth rate is going down. Those other birth rates can't go higher than the white birth rate goes down. Got to control this thing. I think that's the next step. I mean, and that way they placate the MAGA types. They placate the evangelicals who are saying, they're scratching their head saying, I don't know, why did God fail us? But that was the message. That was the message in Ohio. It's in the Constitution. And now you're going to see other states try to replicate what Ohio did. And this whole thing that it's 50 states, it's going to be a battleground each state. Well, maybe for some, but the majority of states look like they're going to be like Ohio. Ohio was a red state. It went blue in terms of abortion. Here's an interesting thing, though, that, well, the Republicans being pro-family, being pro-life, what's odd is they've done nothing to really, I don't know, what have they done for children? I mean, what is their education plan? I mean, look what Betsy DeVos did when she was the education secretary. I mean, they're all for vouchers. They want to undo public schools, but really, and this is where I turn to Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson is I like her. I like her a lot. This is not an endorsement. It's just that there's a blackout on candidates not named Biden for the Democrats because he's the presumed nominee. He'd run again. But Marianne Williamson has gotten, I think, 16% in one of the polls. And she is filed in all these states this week. So I'm getting some of her literature. And this is what she says in her latest one. She says, one of the pillars of my campaign is a plan to establish a United States Department of Children and Youth. There are several reasons why I think it's needed. When our government was founded, women had no voice in the public realm, and raising children was thought of as women's work. Mothers were the main voices for our children, and when women had no voice, then neither did their kids. But we do have a voice now, and we need to speak up much more for our children. I think America's children are the main collateral damage of the malevolent strain of soulless vulture capitalism that has come to dominate our economic system over the last 50 years. Not old enough to vote, children have no political leverage. Not old enough to work, they have no economic leverage. They have no power to advocate for themselves, and that is our job. It is an aspect of social maturity, whether we are parents or not, to stand up for the nation's young. Now, how many people would say that who are running? How many Republicans are saying that? I mean, they'll say, "Oh yeah, we're doing something for kids." Look at the education department. We're saying, "Hey, we're for vouchers. We're against public schools." I'm telling you, that's the Republican side. The Democrats, what are the Democrats saying? Well, Biden's doing status quo. Not bad. But like I said, there's a blackout in terms of new ideas. And on the day after abortion has been put in the Constitution in Ohio, I think it's kind of interesting that we hear from the other, well, there's at least two other official candidates on the Democratic side. Actually, one other, because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an independent now. But there is Dean Phillips from Minnesota. He says he's running, and he's lower in the totem pole than Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson got token coverage the last time she ran, and now she's virtually ignored. I don't think she should be ignored. I think you should hear her voice. I'm not saying you should vote for her, but I'm all for people getting their, if they're running, and she's committed to running, I'm all for them getting their views out. And I think a Department of Children and Youth would be a great thing for the United States. She says, as president, I want a massive transfer of resources into the lives of small children. We know things about early childhood that we didn't even know a few years ago. And 90% of a child's brain development occurs before age 5. If we want a country that thrives 10 years from now, we need to put a lot more resources into the lives of children under the age of 10 today. If I'm president, we will. And this is Marianne Williamson speaking. You know, the thing what she's saying that gets me is that, where's all the money? You know, it's all spread out, right? In health and human services, education, it's all spread out. I mean, the kids are an afterthought. This is the odd thing about Republicans using abortion is saying, hey, we're family. It creates It's a village. It's communities. Right? That's why we're pro-abortion or anti-abortion, rather. Right? That's not selling. Clearly. Uh, and the old way of Republicans selling abortion was fear-mongering. Those baby killers. Well, and the Democrats went with pro-choice, and that was flagging a little bit. They sharpened it a little bit, and they now call it, we're pro-freedom. You're free. You can choose what you want to do with your bodies, ladies. That's powerful. That's enough to bring over a lot of those moderate Republican women. And now here's Marianne Williamson saying, hey, look, you may not want to have kids because, we as a government don't do enough for our kids. She says, we're going to have a Department of Children and Youth. I think it's brilliant. It focuses attention on the thing that really, look, if we're not going to pay attention to climate change, which has a lot of bearing on whether or not we have a future, then let's put some money into our children because our children are our future. I say that as a father of 3. That was probably the most important thing that I did, in my 30s and 40s, raising children. And truthfully, my wife did most of it. Marianne Williamson says, the truth is there are millions of children in America who are traumatized before preschool. I've met principals at elementary schools who told me they have students on suicide watch. At public schools throughout America, there are now trauma rooms. Trauma-informed education is now a mainstream notion. We need to ask ourselves, why is childhood in America such a trauma for millions of our children? I feel bad reading that because here, my childhood trauma, well, I had some childhood trauma, but my childhood education trauma was going to Harvard. That's sort of a joke, but not really. Back to Marianne. Hungry children cannot learn, and we have millions of them. Traumatized children will not do well in school, and we have millions of them. The Seattle public school system has sued the tech giants behind TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat for targeting their products to children. There's now a known causation, not just correlation, a causation between children spending too much time on social media and their inability to sleep, focus, and learn. Can any adults in the room relate to that? She asks. Our children, in far too many ways, are being set up not to win, but to fail. People with experience of America's foster care system, child welfare system, and children's health and nutritional system, not to mention our educational system, report widespread dysfunction bordering on breakdown. Imagine a president who puts those things on top of her list of things to address. If and when I'm president, we will radically change direction. Our kids will come first. My God, how many times have you heard anyone running for president say our kids come first? I don't hear it. Our kids come first is different from America first, which, is something you've heard, I'm sure. But our kids come first? If you don't know Marianne Williamson, check her out. She's a Democrat running for president. You haven't heard of her because there's a blackout, because people are afraid of these new ideas. They're new ideas, and here's my thought. Look, I'd rather meditate with Marianne Williamson than necessarily vote for her, but I see these things and it makes me say, hey, she's a reasonable, rational person who deserves to be heard. And she might make an excellent president, considering all those people that, we're looking at now Look at the Republicans, who they're trotting out. So if you're thinking, hey, there's got to be someone better, there is another Democrat. She's undergone a blackout, so you don't really hear or see much of her. But Marianne Williamson, check out her website. Google Marianne Williamson. And I think the website is, let's see, what is the website? Marianne Williamson for president. I think if you put that in, you'll find it. But I think if you don't check out some of these candidates and hear what they have to say, you'll think all the politicians are the same, and that's not true. I mean, you saw last night, politicians are scrambling to figure out a way. I mean, at least not the Democrats. The Democrats say, hey, it's all about freedom, it's all about choice. But the Republicans are scrambling, trying to figure out, well, what are we going to talk about abortion now? I mean, I think we're going to be back to baby killer. I think you're going to see the baby killer rhetoric. And although now I really think you're going to see people say, killing the right babies. We're not killing the right. And then, of course, the evangelicals say, well, we can't kill the white babies because the white birth rate is already so low. Well, we need to kill all those other, I mean, if you want to have the abortion, be our guest. That's probably where they're going to go. Like I said, the Republicans are not afraid to be racist. And I see if they can't turn around the abortion issue in a normal, logical way, and they can't, then they will turn it around in a racist way. And don't like to see that happen, but I didn't like to see a Muslim ban. I didn't like seeing, the harsh immigration rules and border walls and all that. But I think that's in the future, especially if already we're having Donald Trump talking about just invoking the Insurrection Act from day one. If he's elected, he's already starting a kind of fascistic foundation for America. Check out that Washington Post story that ran yesterday. So, anyway, but there's reason for optimism. I'm telling you, there's reason for optimism. The Democrats, after last night's election, they got good news in Ohio, a red state, in terms of abortion. And they got good news in Kentucky. They may have found a future nationwide leader in Andy Beshear, a person who can reach out both aisles. So there's optimism. And like I said, if you check out people like Marianne Williamson, maybe we'll see some good ideas float to the top. I mean, that's one of the things about people who run and are rational and aren't crack. Marianne Williamson is not a crackpot. She's not an anti-vaxxer. She has reasonable views, but they come across as radical. Can you imagine that? To have a department of women and children, or a department devoted to families? People say, oh, we already have that now, Health and Human Services. No. Marianne Williamson, she's running. And you ought to check her out. All right, that's it for my show today. Cutting it short. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the Smithsonian. And sort of an Asian American thing, 101. That's tomorrow. Also, check out the PETA podcast, Charles River Labs. now coming clean, saying, yeah, we're you wanted a monkey lab, but hey, we're doing something else too. We're going to try to do non-monkey things. And they're scrambling because they can't figure out, well, if we're not going to use monkeys, how are we going to, the whole research industry has been beholden to old conservative ideas. And, it takes a long while to turn this big ship of mega research, mega pharma research. But now, new technology and people who've relied on old ideas like testing on animals, they're having to adapt. It's happening to these industries in the same way that it happened to brick and mortar stores in the late 90s and 2000s, the way it happened to the taxi, cab and logistics industries when Uber came along. And, we're not talking about a high-tech business, but they use technology to revolutionize their business. It's going to happen to all these companies, all these industries at some point, and it's now happening to animal research, apparently. All right. Anyway, check out the PETA podcast. It dropped today. All right, that's it for our show. Hey, look, you found this. This is my secret podcast. I do it live. It's secret because it's secret. That you can't find it on, wherever you find your podcasts. It's just me talking about the news. Oh, a shout out to David O. He lost in his bid to become Philadelphia mayor. I didn't even know he was running. David O. I've interviewed him, talked to him about his Korean American roots and tragedy that happened in his family. I mean, he's still at it for, as a local politician. I know he's not done. You lose a race, you're not done. You grow, you learn. So a shout out to David O. He's a Republican, so I'm reaching across the aisle, but I know him to be a good guy. He lost to a woman who I believe became the first African American mayor of Philadelphia. So good news there. And but we'll see what happens next in Philadelphia, especially with David O. And like I said, that's it for our show today. Catch us on YouTube at Emil Amok 1, on Facebook at Emil Amok, or at facebook.com, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media, and also on Twitter at Emil Amok. AMOK.com is functioning. It's up, but our IT specialists are working on AMOK.com. All right. We end our show with a little meditation, a little metta. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal Kita.